This was one of my favorite books when I was young, and I think that explains why I liked The God of the Woods. Hey, it's Em, here to talk about The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. If I'm remembering right, the book already went back to the library, but in the introduction, I did mention in passing August Die She Must by Barbara Corcoran. This is a book that I loved as an elementary and middle school student. It's kind of dark for that age group. I guess in the 80s we weren't that concerned about some of the content that gets discussed in this book, but as a kid I loved this book, which is also set at a summer camp, and that is maybe why I was predisposed to like The God of the Woods. Now, I had heard of the book, and I had heard some people loved it and some people hated it, okay? And when I found it at the library, I read the flap. It's set in the present timeline, because the book jumps around in time, is summer of 1975 at a camp in upstate New York called Camp Emerson. And we follow a number of different characters. One of the campers who's like 12 or 13. We follow the mother of the missing children, and we follow a camp counselor, and we follow a police detective. All of the characters we follow are female. No, there's one convict on the loose that we do see a couple of small chapters from, but we don't spend a lot of time with him. What I found useful, because we were jumping around in time a lot, is that each chapter had kind of a timeline, and in bold it would tell you which point on the timeline you were on. Like, were you back in 1961 or the 1950s or whatever. So basically what the setup is that this very wealthy family, the Van Laars, they own a big piece of land in upstate New York, and part of that land is Camp Emerson. And 14 years ago, their son disappeared. He was 8. And not long after he disappeared, they had a daughter. She's now 13 or 14 herself, and she has begged to go to the camp for the summer to get out of the house. And so she goes to the camp and disappears. And so we're following Barbara, the disappeared teen's bunkmate, who kind of befriended her over the summer. Or honestly, Barbara befriended her. Tracy is shy and kind of a loner and just really wants to read her books, but she's kind of enchanted by Barbara, and Barbara forms a bond with her of sorts. And so we see things through Tracy's eyes, and Louise, who is the counselor who's on the hook for Barbara's disappearance, and like I said, a police detective. She's the first female investigator in the unit or whatever. And it's interesting because I ended up giving this book a 3.8, so I rounded up to 4 stars on Goodreads. I really enjoyed it overall. There were definitely points where I was very close to putting it down. Very close to being like, should I just find a spoiler summary and read what happens, read who done it or whatever, and be done with it. But I pushed through, and I'm glad I did. There were some points of view, or some moments in the points of view, I should say, that just didn't interest me, and maybe were a little more than we needed. I mean, I don't want to say anything was wasted, but it is a long book, and there were definitely chunks of it, I don't know, that felt... It talks about a lot of weighty stuff, and in some places I felt like, yeah, we get it. We didn't need the extra, if that makes sense. At the same time, I think everything in the book contributes to character and plot and what's going on. I think, for me, Louise, the counselor, was probably the part that I didn't need quite as much of. I felt bad for her, because the dynamics of this book are very much a social commentary on how the rich get away with stuff and they can blame the less fortunate. and the less fortunate just kind of have to take it, but at the same time examining the fact that the salt of the earth types who are capable, and it's the rich people who need them. And it's kind of a reminder in this day and age of who really needs who, right? Because as the name of the house, the Van Laar's house, is Self-Reliance, and the joke is it was built by a bunch of people that weren't Van Laar's, right? They had to hire a bunch of locals to help them build it. It is not a self-reliant house, and it never has been. They have a huge staff of locals that come and tend to everything for them. So anyway, yes, at the end of the day, I did enjoy it. The solutions to the mystery, I mean, there were a couple of things that I definitely saw coming. I'll put a little spoiler warning up. Like, it was pretty clear to me from the start that Delphine and Peter, sorry. There's Jean-Paul and there's a Peter. Delphine and Peter were already maybe having a thing when Delphine kind of had him marry her. Like, she basically brokered a deal to have Peter marry her younger sister Alice. And it was pretty clear to me that Delphine and Peter were already close, let's say, even though Delphine was also married to Peter's friend. So it wasn't a surprise to me later on that they were found having an affair, right? Like, that was not surprising to me. And I also pretty much knew that they were setting it up to look like John Paul murdered Barbara, that was clearly not going to be what happened. And again, I was pretty sure that Bear, the 8-year-old son, was dead, and that they were diverting. I mean, it's not like they weren't. The author wasn't really trying to hide it. It was pretty clear. So the question was like, what really happened, not whether or not he was actually still alive. So anyway, that's it for spoilers. But yeah, I mean, despite all that, I think enjoyed the overall process of reading through everything that was happening and all the different points of view. It was a lot. There was a lot, like I said, a lot of jumping around in time, a lot of different POVs. The timeline at the start of each chapter and the name to remind you of whose head you were in. It's all, third person, but still. Because honestly, it's not as if the voices were super different. The points of view were different, so obviously you were getting different angles on the story, but the actual tone was consistent throughout, which is good for third person. I mean, obviously if it had been written first person, I would have wanted a variation in the way they think and talk and all that, but yeah, I don't know, I liked it. And I know a lot of people didn't. A lot of people thought it was boring, and I read a lot of reviews where people did DNF it, and there were times when I came close to that, so I understand that too. But by the end of it, I was glad I had pushed through to the end. Your mileage may vary. There's Crowley. Hopefully by the time I'm ready to make another video, I'll be in my new space, because we are fixing up the new office. In fact, this bookcase behind me is about to be emptied and moved. So you may see it again, but it will be in a different place, and it'll probably be set up differently next time you see it. But yeah, if you read The God of the Woods, let me know. If you happen to have read August Die She Must, let me know, because I don't think I've ever met another person who's read this book. And until next time, take care.